Hey everyone, CoolKid here, and welcome to Tileset Secrets, a new series where we explore Warframe's many tilesets in depth. For those who don't know, tilesets are groups of rooms and hallways, referred to as tiles, that are pseudo-randomly connected in missions. These tilesets are often packed with interesting environmental details, secret rooms, and other goodies of that nature. For our debut episode, I want to take a look at my favorite tileset in the entire game, the Corpus Gas City. The Corpus Gas City can be found on Jupiter, and it uniquely contains the Corpus Amalgam faction. The faction itself won't be explored too much in this video, but it's composed of the Vapos Corpus, as well as Corpus Amalgam enemies. These amalgams are fusions of Corpus and sentient creatures, including both robots and people. Alad V controls this tileset, and he also serves as the boss for the planet, being battled alongside his Zanuka proxy on Themisto. I want to talk about this tileset for a lot of reasons, but first, let me set the scene. The Corpus Gas City takes place high up in the atmosphere of Jupiter, and it's the site of a dark pact forged between Alad V and the Sentients. The facilities themselves are designed to extract Jupiter's resources on a massive scale, and to further research the fusion of Corpus and Sentient. The tileset is made up of crisscrossing pipes, run-down walkways, and large drops that mean certain death. In the distance, several other Corpus Gas Cities can be seen, as well as some sentient construct concealed by the clouds. This tileset is full of fun and interesting details, but before we start digging deep, I want to talk about some unique elements of the tileset that can be found throughout its many rooms. First up, this tileset is home to several unique barrels. In addition to the explosive barrels found across pretty much every tileset, we also have the helium barrel, biogas barrel, and spent radium barrel. The helium barrel is easily my favorite, as it's just a physics object. You can shoot or melee it to knock it around, sending it flying in the process. It's a little thing, but I think it's a ton of fun. Biogas barrels are green for an amazing reason. When detonated, they inflict a 6-second gas proc on nearby players and enemies. Spent radium barrels are the most rare, but also the most fun, as they inflict a radiation proc on anyone near them when they detonate. This means that, if you're lucky enough to find one, you get a few fleeting moments of real PvP. This tileset was also the debut of the beloved domestic drone, a cleaning robot that works tirelessly to keep the floors spotless. This drone has a unique mod drop in Repair Kit, but who would be so heartless as to destroy this little guy? The domestic drone also has a cousin in the Fuser drone, which can be found welding in various exterior tiles. We can even find a larger variant in the service drone, which only appears in a few outdoor tiles and seems to be scanning or repairing rundown architecture. All of these drones can be stood on and ridden around, which is genuinely one of my favorite things in the entire game. The pioneers used to ride these babies for miles. The Gas City is also home to several unique map hazards, most common of which is the distressed pipe. These pipes have flashing orange lights on them, and if the light is damaged, the pipe will burst, spewing out a jet of fire that rapidly applies heat procs to those near it. Throughout the various hallways of the city, you can find doors affixed with scanners. If the player crosses the path of a scanner, it will turn red, and a trap will be activated in the next room. The first of these is the shock turret, which deploys from the ceiling and rapidly electrocutes all units in its radius. This damage stacks up very quickly, but fortunately, the turret can be defeated. Shooting this orange disc deploys an energy cell that deals even more damage, but if this cell is destroyed, then the turret is taken offline. Turrets also self-destruct after about 5 seconds, so you're welcome to just leave them alone for a bit as well. The second possible trap is the gas vent, which will emit a green cloud for 10 seconds that deals toxin damage to any units in its radius. This damage is pretty low all things considered, but unlike the shock turret, it can't be destroyed, and as it's toxin damage, it goes directly to health. Scanners are typically pretty easy to dodge, as they only cover a portion of the door they're attached to. They can also be destroyed if they take damage, so if you remain aware, then they aren't too much of an issue. This tileset also features some fun parkour props in the form of antennas and crossbars. These are mostly found in exterior tiles, and they can be mounted like ziplines, which offers some fun movement opportunities. On the topic of exterior tiles, many of them also have terminals that deploy bridges, making them that much more wheelchair accessible. Or Sabuchi accessible, to be frank. Exterior tiles also have a few random events that can occur, with one being far more common than the others. The first and most common is the appearance of a Vapus Condor dropship, which, unlike the regular Condor dropship, doesn't actually drop off enemies. Instead, it will fire its cannons at the player, though it can be destroyed by returning fire. The second and much rarer event is a Ropalolis sighting, where the sentient chicken thing shows up and wrecks shit. Sometimes it'll just fly away, but it can also fire lasers across the tile, dealing very high damage for a brief time. These lasers also light up machinery they hit, causing said machinery to emit electric damage in a large radius. This is fairly rare, but it's super cool to see in action, and it's one of my favorite parts of the entire tile set. It's also possible to sometimes catch a glimpse of the Vapus Aquila, a fighter jet that will take shots at the player as it flies by. Speaking of random events, Aled V will occasionally taunt the player before spawning a batch of Amalgams, enemies unique to the Gas City. These squads consist of various combinations of the Amalgam Alkanost, Heket, Kukamats, Machinist, Moa, Osprey, and Satyr. I feel like I said half those wrong, but what the fuck ever. I'm not going to go in-depth on how these enemies work, as that's more analyzing the Amalgams territory, but I wanted to point out that these enemies both exist and will be periodically spawned to attack the player. Another overarching gameplay feature is the Amalgam Labs, which are locked behind special doors that are marked with 3 to 4 symbols. Personally, I call these symbols Dome, Square, Box, and Triangle. These symbols each correspond to a switch placed somewhere in the room, and said switches must be pressed in the correct order to open the door, with this order being top to bottom when looking at the door itself. By default, the switches needed to open this door are sealed, but they can be revealed by finding a glowing red box called an access controller hidden somewhere in the room. Once destroyed, you can use the minimap to locate the switches, though you'll have to take a mental note of where each symbol is. Once you've located each switch, press the first one, and then race against the clock to hit the others, as the time limit starts once the first button is pressed. Completion of the puzzle opens the door, revealing both a purple locker and another door that looks into an Amalgam lab. The purple Corpus locker drops a random Gas City Captura scene, but that's the least interesting thing in this room. If we enter operator mode and damage the sentient-looking door, it'll actually open, allowing us access to the lab. This lab contains another purple locker with another Captura scene, but it also contains several unique enemies. First and most obvious is the Vapus Bioengineer, which engages the player with a Detron. These rooms also contain several unique Amalgam enemies that are being studied, and if attacked or approached, these enemies will break free from their restraints and assault the player. The possible spawns include the Cinder Machinist, Arca Heket, Arca Kukamats, Phase Moa, and Swarm Satyr. It's also possible to encounter Battalists and Conculists in these rooms, which mixes things up a bit. Now, personally, I think it's super cool that these rooms have unique enhanced enemies, and if you're trying to fill out your codex, you'll want to pop your head in here from time to scan them. The final noteworthy thing about this tile set is the partnership fragments, which are lore fragments that tell the story of Aled's deal that he struck with the Sentients. There are 8 of these fragments in total, and they are hidden in specific spots within certain tiles. A few curia can also be found here, which are small scannables scattered throughout the system that tell the story of the Grineer Queens. I point all of this stuff out just to set expectations, as we're going to bring up each of these things when relevant. We're going to explore room by room just to make things easier to structure, but if any rooms contain an Amalgam Lab, curia, or partnership fragment, I'll be sure to show you how to get it. Otherwise, we'll talk about secret rooms and unique mechanics, because that stuff is cool as hell. If a room has a corresponding Captura scene, then I'll refer to the room by that name, but if not, then I'll just make something up. Alright, with all of the setup complete, let's get exploring. First up is the Conduit Room, which is a connector hallway with several pipes running across it. In the middle of the room is an inaccessible door, with Corpus text above that reads, Pressure Control Room. A screen can be found in each joining hallway, which can contain a bunch of different Corpus images. At each end of the room, we find a plaque above each exit door, reading, We are the Corpus. This plaque can be found above many doors in this tile set, so if you see it, that's what it translates to. This room contains several pipes overhead, which can be used to climb towards the ceiling. If you work your way up to the top of the room, you'll find a walkway with a door on each end, as well as an opposite walkway with an observation deck in the middle. If you enter this observation deck and then look at the barrels on the back wall, you can find a curia to scan. Once you've done that, look straight up to find the access controller, which can be destroyed to unlock this room's Amalgam Lab switches. I'll go ahead and show the solution now. Next up is the Central Drop, which is a room of 4 large capacitors hanging over a massive pit. These capacitors are linked together with various ziplines, which can be mounted to move between them. The edges of this room are littered with walkways, as well as various white stripes to show areas to wall run. On the topic of white paint, this set of white paint seems to pulse in time with its neighboring light, which is pretty funny. We can also find the occasional service drone working to repair the damage to this area, which of course necessitates some horseplay. There are several levels of catwalks with inaccessible doors, and if the player works their way down to the lowest level, they can find that each capacitor has a small catwalk encircling it. There is one exception to this though, as one capacitor has some kind of radar dish affixed to it instead. Each of these 3 catwalks has a terminal that can be hacked, and hacking all 3 unlocks a button on the 4th capacitor's spinning antenna. If this button is pressed, the capacitors will all discharge, creating a giant field of electricity. If a Vapus gunship is present when this fires, it will be destroyed instantly. The catwalks around each capacitor have more to them than just the terminals, though. At this catwalk farthest from the antenna, in a small crevice underneath the walkway, you can find a partnership fragment to scan. If you take the zipline across to the next catwalk, and then drop down to the ledge under it, you can find the access controller for this room. Destroying the controller unlocks the buttons required to open this room's Amalgam Lab, and I'll show the solution on screen now. Next up is the Cloud Vista, which is a small room that leads out to an open balcony. The inside area has 2 of the volunteer posters from earlier, as well as stairs that lead up to an observation window. At the top of each set of stairs, there are vent grates that can be destroyed, leading to the outdoor portion of the tile. This balcony has 2 antennas that can be mounted, as well as a small outcrop connected to a door. Now, this tile has 2 variants, with one having a low ceiling and one having a high ceiling. When in the high ceiling version of the tile, we can work our way up to find that you can mount the flagpoles like ziplines, which is cool. Going up farther, you can find more vents at the top of these pipes, and when broken, they lead into another observation deck. This deck can contain things like exterminate caches, and if you press this button, the glass of the deck will be opened. If we look left out of this window, we can see a partnership fragment perched atop a vent, which can be scanned. Next up is the Elemental Refinement Room, whose entrance contains text on the floor that reads, Helium Synthesis. This room is a guaranteed spawn if you're playing Sabotage, which makes it pretty easy to find. If we walk into the room and up the stairs, we can find the defining characteristic of this area, Helium-3 processors. If destroyed, they leave a lingering cloud that inflicts gas damage. After one processor has been destroyed, the remaining 2 will deploy blast shields to protect themselves from damage. One end of the room has an observation deck flanked by 2 doors, and beneath this deck is a vent that leads down to the lower level. Revealing the door to an Amalgam Lab. If we take the walkway back up to the helium processors, we can jump up to the observation deck and enter through its doors. Within this area, we find the access controller, and destroying it unlocks the buttons for the lab. I'll go ahead and show the solution now. Next up is the Elemental Regulators room, which is also guaranteed in sabotage missions. If we walk in through the main doors, we find text on the floor that reads, Hydrogen Siphon Bay. If we go right, we can find this small elemental condenser, and if we go behind it to this support beam, we can find a curia to scan. We can also find small doors in this area, with text on the floor reading, Storage. If we walk back out into the main room and up the stairs, we can see that the sides of the elemental condensers read, Danger. Turning around, we can find a walkway leading to an observation deck, which contains a few lockers and the like. Once we're through here, we can walk out to the edge of the room, which is often a spot for mobile defense terminals. We can see several turbines out in the distance sucking up Jupiter's hydrogen, and in the context of sabotage, Ortis says this operation is consuming Jupiter's resources on a massive scale. If we go left, we can find a mirror image of the right side of the room, with the same observation deck and small condenser. There is one major difference though. If we jump off the left edge of the room and go around the corner, we find a small outcrop containing a partnership fragment. Next up is the Gas City Lifts, which has a pretty self-explanatory name. On the floor of the entrance, we find the text Gas Chemical Reactor. This room is a huge vertical shaft, with a giant helium-3 processor running through its heart. This room contains loads of pipes, walkways, zip lines, and doors, all across various elevations. If we go down to the bottom of the room, we can find a button that builds a walkway connecting to the helium reactor. If we walk into the hallway nearby, we can find an Amalgam Lab door, though we can't open it just yet. All around the room, various elevators carry crates up towards the ceiling, and these crates can be ridden. If we ride these elevators up to the top, and stand on this balcony over the room's main entrance, we can find the room's access controller. Destroying this controller will unlock the lab's buttons, and I'll show the solution now. Next up is Upper Logistics, a simple L-shaped connector room. This room contains several lockers, volunteer posters, and an Amalgam Lab door sitting near the top of the staircase. If we look to the right of the lab door, we can find a track sitting between two large doors. The door by the lab will periodically open, spitting out a pallet that carries barrels to the opposite door, which will open to swallow them up before closing again. If we move to the right side of the first door, then when it opens, we can see the access controller for this room. Shooting this controller will unlock the buttons for the Amalgam Lab, and I'll show the solution now. Next up is the walkway, or, well, what's left of it. This is an exterior tile that is made up of a broken catwalk. This catwalk can be traversed using two primary paths. The first is the upper path, where the player jumps between broken segments of the catwalk until they reach the opposite side. The second path is down low, where the player can jump between ziplines and antennas until they reach the far end. There's also these jets of fire, but they don't actually do any damage, so I guess they're just there for decoration. There are a few small doors with broken catwalks down underneath the main doors, but they don't actually open. Instead, they're just there to make climbing back up to the main level easier. If we look out from the broken catwalk, we can find two large structures. If we make our way over to the one on the left, then get behind it relative to the side facing the catwalk, we can find our next partnership fragment. Next up is the lobby, which is one of the area's spawn tiles. If we walk into the, well, lobby, we can find a giant metal statue that reads Corpus. If we hop up onto this statue and take a look inside the triangle at the top, we can find another curia to scan. From here, if we look straight up, we can find an elevated area with several walkways. If we parkour our way up here, we can find that there are several doors, which can open into dead-end rooms. This is a fairly common spot for exterminate caches and the like, so be sure to check up here if you're looking for those. Next up, we have another spawn tile, which starts on an exterior landing pad. Across from the spawn is a large door, and above this door is the same metal statue reading Corpus. If we enter the interior portion of this tile, we find a cross-shaped junction, with a large metal statue on the far wall that reads War Rich. Each side of the main walkway has elevators moving up and down, and we can hop down these elevators to find a small storage area. Off to the right, we can find a hall with another Amalgam Lab door, but there's no way to open it quite yet. To the right of this door, we can find a vent that leads back up to the main area. If we look towards the entrance, we can see text above the door that reads, Bay 110. From here, if we hop onto the elevators on the left side and look up, we can find the access controller for this room. Breaking this controller will unlock the buttons for the Amalgam Lab, and I'll show the solution now. Next up is the generator, which contains a large, evil-ass contraption in the middle of the room. On the floor by the entrance, we can find text that reads, Generator Room. You can, probably guess how I learned this room's name. Approaching the generator itself, we can find danger stripes, along with text reading, Caution. If we walk up to the second level, we can just stand in the middle of the open spark gap, which inflicts the electric status and deals electric damage. This seems horribly unsafe, but none of this game's factions really seem that concerned with OSHA, all things considered. Going up further, we can find a third level with a door, and then a fourth level with a door, with these doors leading to other rooms. If we walk into the small hallway on the fourth floor, we can see a broken grate on the left side. If we break this grate, we can work our way up to an observation deck, which contains a few lockers. If we look out into the room from this deck, we can see a fifth floor with a terminal. If we exit through the vent and jump up here, we can hack the terminal on this ledge. Nothing will happen at first, and that's because we have to work our way to the opposite side of the room to hack an identical terminal. Once both of the terminals have been hacked, the generator will enter overdrive, dealing electric damage to anything standing on the second level of the room. While we're up here, you might notice there's a small gap at the top of the generator. If we hop up to this gap, we can find another curia sitting in the middle of the power cell. You can be shocked by the electricity up here though, so be careful. Next up is the Cargo Crane Extraction tile, which is made up of a two-tiered walkway surrounded by cargo crates. If we drop down to the lower level, we can find a sealed room with a strange logo, as well as text that reads, Medical. Heading out into the room's exterior, we find a huge amount of cargo boxes, as well as a metal statue reading, Corpus. This room contains a ton of nooks and crannies. As several of the crates are open, these cargo boxes can contain things like lockers, crates, resource nodes, and even furniture from Thailand. If we look out into the distance, we can see a large crane, and if we parkour our way to it, we can find that it's actually accessible. Up here, atop the crane, we can find our next partnership fragment. Next up is the Dropship Bay, which contains walkways surrounding an open pit. This pit will periodically have condor or buzzard dropships arrive and dock, and the buzzards can even be entered. It's also possible for a static buzzard to spawn, as well as a static condor. This room contains a remarkable amount of vents, including on each lower level entrance, which simply connect to adjacent areas. If we head over to the elevator, we can ride it up to the second floor. Heading into the hallway and going up these stairs, we can find a small door on each side of the large door. Entering either of these small doors lets us find a vent, and if we drop down into it, we can find a small room that's locked from the inside. These rooms can contain exterminate caches and the like, and if you hack the terminal near the door, you can head back out into the main room. If we instead go back to the vent and drop all the way down, we'll end up under the elevator, which reveals a few things. First, you can find a terminal that moves the elevator, which allows you to escape this spot and get back out into the wider room. You can also find a dead Moa, or, on some occasions, you can find two domestic drones named Daphnis and Chloe. These two drones are a reference to the Greek pastoral novel of the same name, and they are, making out sloppy style. Full tongue and everything. What the fuck? Next up, we have a room I'm calling the Siphon Balcony. This room consists of a balcony overlooking two large extractor fans that are sucking up Jupiter's hydrogen. From here, we can go right to a lower area, or go left to a higher area. If we look at the higher area, we can look down and notice there's a small door down below, which will be important in a moment. Turning around, we can also jump up on top of the entrance door, which reveals an Amalgam Lab. Looking around from here, we can find that there are smaller balconies on each side of the room, and one of the doors is unlocked. If we enter this door, we can find the access controller for this room. Destroying this controller unlocks the Amalgam Lab switches, and I'll show the solution now. Next up, we have the Gas Siphon Core, which is easily the rarest room in the entire tileset. This room is made up of two large helium pipes, along with a small control center that they both connect to. Inside the control center, we can find a door that leads outside, and if we hang left and hop over this ledge, we can find our next partnership fragment. Back inside, we can find this grate in the control center floor, and if we break it, we'll find that it's actually a tunnel leading to a secret area. This only contains a few lockers and whatnot, but it can be a spot for exterminate caches, implying this room actually spawns. If we work our way back through the pipe, through the control center, and then stand on the overlook, we can see a button that says, Unlock Door. As far as I can tell, this doesn't unlock any doors, but it does shut the gas main off. This lets us move through the wind tunnel without any physics pushing against us, though it's not really needed. Back in the control center, we can find that there's another vent in the ceiling, just across from the vent in the floor. If we take this vent up, we'll find an identical locker room at the end of the tunnel. If we look to the right, we can also find a vent in the floor, which connects down to the lower level helium pipe we explored earlier. If we head back to the overlook and take a peek into the pit below, we can find that there are two ledges, each with some lockers and a door. These ledges also have a button to build a bridge, but the distance is too far for the bridges to reach, causing them to kinda just wobble in the air. There's not a ton of loot down here, but it is a good spot to know if you're looking for caches. Next up, we have the gas pump, which is another very rare room, though it can appear in mobile defense as an objective tile. When entering the room, we can find text on the floor reading Gas Pump Sector. This tile contains several open streams of gas, and is split into an outdoor and indoor area. If we look to the right after entering the room, we can find a vent, and jumping into this vent lets us find a secret room with an Amalgam Labs switch. Moving back through the vent, we get spit out near the interior area. This area contains more of the gas contraptions, as well as a window that leads outside. On the roof of this small building, there's an object labeled Ultra Capacitor that can be destroyed, though as far as I can tell, it doesn't seem to do anything. If we look across the room towards the entrance, we can see that there's a small balcony high off the ground. This balcony contains a door to another locker room, though it doesn't have much else. Now for the neat part. This room's defining trait is that each of the gas plumes has an orange button next to it. When pressed, this causes machinery to emerge from below, with each plume having 4 nodes beneath it. Destroying these nodes has a chance to drop Oxium, and as there are 4 gas plumes in total, that's 16 Oxium-yielding nodes. The indoor contraptions are a bit different, as the button must be pressed from the inside, but the actual Oxium nodes are only accessible from the roof. While we're up on the roof, if we take a look up high, we can see the familiar glow of an access controller. Like always, destroying this controller unlocks the room's Amalgam Lab switches, and I'll show the solution now. Next up is the Defense and Interception tile, whose purpose is pretty self-explanatory. While this tile doesn't really have a secret room per se, it does have a really cool secret mechanic. Just behind the defense objective, or B tower in Interception, you'll notice this big electric doodad. This thing shocks you if you touch it, and with a little work, it can shock a whole lot more than just us. If we jump over the railing and head underneath the objective platform, we can find some kind of condenser, and on the opposite side from where we entered, we'll find a red button. If given a few minutes to charge, this button will turn green, and when pressed, it will cause the electric doodad to pulse out electricity across the floor, frying enemies and players alike. This puts the button on cooldown, requiring another brief wait before it can be used again. This mechanic isn't all that powerful, but it is super cool, so I thought I would include it. Next up is the Zipline Walkway, which is an exterior hallway tile split into 2 levels. On one side there's a catwalk, and on the other side there's a zipline, hence my naming scheme. In the middle of the room there is a large structure, with a statue reading Corpus. If we hop up onto the second level, and then hop again onto the large center structure, we can find our last curia for the Gas City tile set. Our next room is the Gas City Drop Junction, which has 4 possible entrances arranged in a plus shape, with a large drop in the middle. Suspended over this drop is a zipline, which the player can use to cross the gap if they forgot how to bullet jump. If we look up, we can see a ledge with 2 vent grates. We can make our way up here and destroy these grates to find a secret locker room, which contains a plaque reading Cargo Hold. If we exit this area and go back out into the main room, we can just walk straight up this trim along the wall and get to another ledge. From this ledge, hop up onto this bent pipe section on the left, and then look out towards the pillar farthest away from you. There, we find our next partnership fragment. Next up is a room I'm calling the Radar Stairway, as it contains a large stairway overlooking a spinning radar dish. If we entered from the lowest level, we can find text on the floor that reads, Sector 11101. If we look to the right, we can see another Amalgam Lab door, though we can't open it just yet. If we look out towards the staircase, we can see a zipline to the right of a large pillar. If we mount this zipline, walk up to its top, and then look down, we'll see an antenna down below. If we drop to this antenna and then look towards the pillar it's attached to, we'll find our final partnership fragment. Moving back up towards the top of the room, we can climb the staircase to the highest level. Here at the top, we find another statue reading War Rich, as well as a Luxor logo on the adjacent wall. If we look to the left of this Luxor logo, we can see a faint red glow, and wouldn't you know it, if we parkour our way up here, that's the location of the access controller. Breaking this controller unlocks the buttons needed to open the Amalgam Lab, and I'll go ahead and show the solution now. Next up is the elevator spawn, which spawns the player at the top of an elevator shaft. Normally we'd ride the elevator down to a lower floor to begin the mission, but if we instead look up, we find that the shaft extends farther than you might expect. If we climb up to the top of this elevator shaft, we'll find another area almost identical to the spawn room, which can contain exterminate caches and the like. I also want to point out that, if we look out the window, we can see a hangar full of condors, with the dropships occasionally docking or leaving. They even have binary numbers on each dock, along with various barrels and the like. It's a pretty small thing overall, but I think it's a really cool detail, and it really contributes to that feeling of the tileset being alive. Next up, we have Alpha Control, whose name is derived from the text on the floor that reads Alpha Control. Real shocker, I know. This room has several computer stations scattered about, and in the middle of the room, we can find some sort of blue elemental condenser tube. Honestly, this reminds me of a Metroid Prime energy tank. At the far end of the room, there's a large window that looks outside, along with a more sophisticated-looking computer terminal. If we head back to the center of the room and look up above the energy tank, we can find the access controller for this room. Destroying the controller will unlock the Amalgam Lab switches, and I'll show the solution now. Next up is the Extractor Extract, which is not my most creative name. This extract tile has several hydrogen extractors in the distance, but it also has a couple of secret areas. If we look to the left, we can find a ledge down below the platform, which can spawn exterminate caches and the like. If we go back up to the entrance door and instead go right, we find an identical platform. But we can also find a broken vent grate. If we go down through this vent, we find that it ends in a secret locker room, with a domestic drone struggling to vacuum up a crewman's corpse. This room has two inaccessible doors, with one reading Core Access, and the other reading Reactor. Okay, I just need to rant about some nerd shit real quick. So, the Corpus alphabet is actually missing certain letters. For example, there's no X, and there's also no C, with the letter C being replaced by a CH character. This means that typically if a C is used, then the K character will be used instead, and if an X is used, then a K and an S will be used. For example, in the Luxor logo, it's actually LUKSOR because there's no X. I explain all of this to highlight the fact that for some reason, whenever there is a door that says the word access, it uses the CH character like it's the letter C, when you'd think it would be spelled AKSESS, because that's the convention they had previously established. I don't think anybody cares about this, but it bothers me so much. This isn't even in the script, I'm just talking about it off the top of my head because it pisses me off. For our final tile of this video, we have the dead exit, which has several broken catwalk pieces going around a large condenser in a sort of semicircle. We can hop across the broken catwalk to make it to the other end of the room. Or we can drop down to the antennas below, which is where we find our secret room entrance. Next to one of these antenna arrays, we find an open vent with a light underneath it. This leads to a room full of crates and lockers, as well as an elevator labeled Sector 1011 Access. If we ride this elevator up, we find a hackable console that opens a door, leading us back into the main part of the tile. Alright, that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. Do note that, while I showed all of the fragment and lab locations, there's still a ton of cool stuff to find in this tile set. I wanted to show off the most important secrets, as well as most of my personal favorites, but there's a ton to explore when it comes to the Gas City. Like I said at the start of this video, the Gas City is my favorite tile set in the whole game, and the plethora of secrets is a huge reason as to why. I love how rewarding it is to explore this place, and it's packed with details that really makes it feel like a lived-in location. On top of that, the aesthetic of being high up in the clouds of a gas giant, peeking over OSHA-violating railings into the endless swirling clouds, it's just so cool. I think it's a real shame that most players will just blow through these incredibly interesting and detailed rooms without a second thought. So if you enjoyed this video, I strongly encourage you to take some time to really explore the tile set. Look around, hunt for secrets. I'll even leave the Corpus language chart in the description if you want to decode some of their writings. There's so much cool stuff to find in this tile set, and it was such a blast making this video. So now, I hope I can pass some of that fun on to you. Beyond all that, let me know what you thought of this video. I'm considering making this a series if there's enough interest, so if that's something you'd like to see, leave a comment letting me know where you'd like me to go next. I also want to thank you very much if you've made it this far, as this sort of digital urbex approach ended up being very different from most of my other content. If you enjoyed, I would appreciate it if you left a like, and if you want to see more antics from time to time, you're welcome to subscribe. I also have a Discord you can join if you hate yourself, and I stream right here on YouTube if you want to stop by. I also want to give a huge thank you to my channel members, whose names you've been seeing on screen. This channel would not continue to exist without their support, so seriously, thank you. With all that said, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all next time when I plummet into Jupiter's core for the Vine.